Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dave. I am joined here with Brandon and our special guest, Mark Estes. We are going to be covering a Black horror for Black History Month. So we decided to bring on someone who I feel represents themselves really well as being somewhat of a connoisseur or an expert in this material. When we were kind of thinking about who could really help add something to this conversation, you were the first person I thought of, because a lot of your social media content is usually very prevalent in a lot of topics along this line, but Black horror especially. But we'll get into that. So Mark, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Man, thank y'all for having me, especially in the time frame of what's going on right now. So I really appreciate you guys working with me through all of that. And I would love, when you guys invited me, I wanted to be a part of that, part of this rather, because I wanted to always be a part of y'all show. I just was waiting for the call because I know y'all got a lot of people y'all got to go through and stuff. So I'm gonna give a call soon. So just chill.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you coming on. So I want to start off by saying sorry for the loss of your brother, man. I had seen that you put a post up that he was the one responsible for getting you into horror. Would you like to talk about that?
He was the first to like, what's the word I'm looking for? He was the first to be like, oh, you like horror movies, who cares? See, my parents are very religious. And some of my aunts and uncles are so religious to the point where they were like, they don't like watching horror because they're scared it's going to release demons into the TV through the TV. And I'm like,
sure.
There's a movie about that, several, but we're not gonna get into that. So I was like, but he was the one who encouraged it. He was like, oh, you like horror movies? Cool. When Dracula 2000 came out, he took me to go see that. He took me to go see I Still Know What You Did last summer. And he's a big techie sound guy. So if you hear people running around listening, like they music is bumping in their cars and stuff like that, he would do that stuff. So I don't know if you guys remember seeing it. I Still Know when they're at the club and the Sugar Daddy's playing. We're sitting there watching the movie excited, and he's like, I gotta go get this soundtrack because they're gonna sound real good in my car. And it was like, he's that type of person.
Yeah.
And he also I was in the hospital sick with a heart issue, and he came in and he was like, yo, we gotta get you out of here. So what you want me to do? I said, Jason versus Freddy. I said, Freddy versus Jason drops this weekend. I need tickets. And he was like, got him. I'm like, good. And so as I got the hospital that weekend, the first thing we were to go see was over the weekend, Freddy versus Jason. So he was always there for me for this shit. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, I feel like, we all have had someone in our life that kind of helped us just own this part, like this interest, this, this hobby. For us, I think it was like kind of like for Brandon and I, and like kind of like even our relationship together has helped me kind of identify like, hey, it's cool to like horror, then there's other people who like it. So it's awesome that you had someone actually like in your family, so close to you to kind of just support you through that. Because liking this genre, it seems like it's like shouldn't be a big deal, but it's kind of ostracizing a little bit too, because it's like not something that people like, well, aside from us, that they wear in their sleeve, you know what I mean? Like you don't always know that somebody's into it because it's like kind of, I guess not something people commonly just go around talking about, except like I said, for us.
Yeah, and especially with I don't know if Brandon can attest to this though, but by us being Black, you know what I'm saying? Because where I come from, it's like, why you watch horror movies? All they do is kill us in them, and we don't survive, and they don't know anything about us. So I left my small town, which is like, if y'all seen the Andy Griffith show, you've seen my small town. It's just like Mayberry. So when I left there, this is how sheltered I was from a lot of stuff. When I left there, I was telling myself, I'm going to be the first Black horror writer. I kept telling folks that, like, I'm gonna be the first Black horror writer. I'm gonna be. Everybody's like, you can be the next Stephen King. I said, I'm gonna be the Black Stephen King. How about that?
There you go.
I got to college and realized there's all these Black horror writers out there, not just in like adult, but like for young kids. Tadana Ravdu, Octavia Butler.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Virginia Hamilton. Now, we had a lot of Virginia Hamilton books in our library because I was a former librarian. None of them had covers on them. So at first I didn't know that the author was Black, and I did not know that she was writing about Black kids in horror situations.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was pissed. I was pissed when I got to Knoxville. I was like, my whole entire existence has been a lie. Like there's been these, I'm thinking I'm going to have to leave the breadcrumbs, and there's been breadcrumbs all along. It's just it's been swiped them off my path. So
let me ask you, did that make it feel more attainable, or did that kind of like be like, oh, it's already been done, now I got to figure out something different?
More attainable.
Okay. So that was it was a good discovery.
Yeah, it was a great discovery, because after learning that, then I learned that there was audiences for that stuff, because again, where in my small town, the only thing catered to Black people in terms of literature was like street lit. You know, you go to the local, well, we didn't have a local bookstore, we had like a Walmart, and everything that had a Black author on it was either selling sex or selling drug dealing. And I got tired of that. And so when I went and found people like Toni Morrison and Brandon Massey, and you know, all those Samuel Delany, you know, it's just all those people out there that writes about the Black experience in various textures and the various you know, formats and whatnot, it just opened my eyes up to be like, let me learn more about where, you know, about this. And instead of me trying to want to be, because I could have been very egotistical and be like, oh, well, it must not have been as good for them not to have in our library, so I'm just gonna go, well, I was like, no, let me learn. You know, I've always been the type of person who's like, I know that there's somebody else out there bigger than me and that knows more about this stuff. And instead of me putting up a wall or putting up this air of I don't need to be, you know, educated on stuff, I'm like, no, feed me more. If you know something else, please let me know.
Yeah. And you become a better person for it. So
right.
Yeah, now I know that you went out of your little town, but now what you can do is open the door for another kid like you that grew up in your town to be comfortable with that, you know?
Exactly.
So that's all you can do.
Yeah, that's the main thing I'm trying to do, Brandon, is just, you know, tell the little kids out there. And I try to do about what little power I had as a librarian. And I'm not going to stay on this too long, but I became the assistant director in my library in my small town. I actually went back there, wasn't trying to be a librarian. I wanted to be out in LA somewhere writing about horror and, you know, doing scripts and stuff like that. But, you know, stuff happened. So I ended up back in my hometown, ended up becoming the senior, I'm about to say senior director, the assistant director of my library. And with that came a little bit of power about what I could put into the library. So when I tell you, we didn't have manga, we didn't have graphic novels, we didn't have the Stephen King books that we did have were falling off their hinges. There wasn't that much horror. And so what I did was I first pretty much injected a lot of Black lit in there. I tried to get more Samuel Delany, Octavia Butler, Tanana Abdul. Then I sat there and went to graphic novels, and I sat there and tried to put more graphic novels and manga in there, because they asked me like, why are the kids not coming in the library? Because I was the youngest person on the staff. I said, they don't have, you cater to 90s people. I'm a 90s person. I was the person who came to the library every day in the 90s. But you haven't updated that area yet. So I brought in all the horror, you know. She only went for Twilight. I'm like, yo, there's other stuff out there besides Twilight. Bring in like these other genres and stuff like that. So when I left that job, I brought in more youth into the library about the stuff that they was reading that day. I don't know anything about the it's a series called, I'm just gonna throw one out there, like something about, it's kind of like Hunger Games but with like weddings. Like these girls was like trying to compete to get it was pretty much like the Bachelorette for a teen set.
Okay.
I never heard
I'm
of
gonna leave it at
No
that.
idea.
Exactly. I don't know nothing about it, but I know that's what the kids was reading, so I brought the stuff in. So I kept, and I told the next person behind me, this is what you need to look for. If you have any questions, any type of, if you want me to suggest something, I will send stuff y'all's way. Just talk to me, because that's the only way y'all gonna stay afloat. If you constantly stay in the past, then you're gonna lose people, you know. So.
I love the fact that like when you're talking about all like the different kind of books you read, you're not just talking about horror. Like you obviously enjoy horror novels, but you're also reading other genres, which I think is super important to like, for I think it helps the horror genre for people to have knowledge of other genres. You know what I mean? Because like
Yeah.
you can bring horror into different places other than just keeping it in like I think that's why ideas just get repeated, is because like sometimes we get rigid and we just stick in our lane rather than expanding and saying how can horror like leak into this, you know?
Exactly. Now, I'm the opposite away from my bookshelf, but my Stephen King bookshelf is behind this computer.
Okay.
And my Black horror and science fiction section with all these Black authors that contributed to Black horror and science fiction is right next to it. This is my general fiction shelf, like, you know, with all my Black authors, LGBTQ authors, classics, stuff like that. And I got another shelf over there with other horror, and I got stuff that I read when I was a kid. You know, I try to keep it a mixture of stuff, you know, because like what you said, I think that's why Stephen King is a great example. It's why he is so prolific, is because he can sit there and like, you know, turn a refrigerator into your living nightmare. You know, he can sit there and drive to your local eatery can be a nightmare. You know, when you sit there and you open yourself up to different avenues when it comes to literature and stuff like that, and they always tell you to keep reading when you write. If you're a writer, the number one thing you need to do is read a lot. And they don't mean just read what's in your genre. Read, you know,
exactly.
Whether it's the newspaper, the magazine, or something like that. I've gotten ideas from reading stuff like Time magazine. You know what I'm saying? So you know, just keep reading. So that's the reason why, you know, horror is still growing. It's still, the tendrils are still going out there and stuff. So yeah, you're right, Dave.
And I want to say, I forgot, like probably 2-3 years ago, I just want to say thank you, because I remember you had put up a post of like the children's Buffy the Vampire Slayer book. You know what I mean? And I had no idea those things are out. And then so, because I was trying to get my daughter to engage into more reading because she was having little issues with reading. And I'm like, all right, well, let me try to connect something that she loves. You know what I mean? And I didn't even notice that book was out, and I got it for her, and she loved that book.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Spread the love of Buffy and reading is just two of my favorite things. I'm trying to work on my niece to become a Buffy fan right now. She's hit 12, so I'm like, it's time.
Yeah. So Mark, let's talk about your podcast, the Midnight Social Distortion and Scream Kingz. What inspired you to start those shows?
Well, Midnight Social Distortion was one night I was sitting, you know, I do sleep noises, and some of my sleep noises I use is static, you know, like static on the TV screen. And so I was sitting there one night, I think I was a little bit tipsy, I'm not gonna lie. I was sitting there one night thinking about, you love horror, but you want to do a podcast. You always talking about doing a podcast. What would you want to call it? And I was staring at the TV for a long time. And I said static, and I said distortion. I said Midnight Distortion. I said no, Midnight Social Distortion, because I wanted to do more stuff where it was like not just horror, but just my love of all things pop culture. Now, there's some pop culture, I'm not gonna lie, I don't touch, I don't mess with it. You know, people look at me like, you haven't read Harry Potter yet? I'm like, I've seen the first movie, but I'm aware of what's going on, so I can sit there and be up there with it. So that's where Midnight Social Distortion came from. And plus, I just come out the closet, and I wanted to take my love of horror and my love of just trying to discover myself in that area and try to piece them together. It was just like, it's distortion. It's like my mind's a constant distortion thing. And I was like, you have one thing to try to tune in, and then another thing to try to tune itself out, and then something else will tune itself in. So I look at my brain as this constant static feed, and it's constantly like tuning into different things. So that's where that came from.
Okay.
Scream Kingz is my boy Taymon Kane's creation. He wanted to talk with other Black content creators about horror, because outside of Bobby and Mike, before I met Bobby and Mike, there was Taymon. He was my horror go-to guy. You know, if I see another Black horror fan, I freak out and like, we have to talk, because where have you been all my life? And so I was like, so I met him through a mutual friend, and he realized that I love horror movies. He tried to be slick and was like, he said a line from Scream. And I asked, why are you quoting Scream right now? He was like, I was expecting you to sit there and like follow with the next line, but the fact that you know it's quoting Scream, we're gonna be fine. And we've been close ever since. He is Gale Weathers incarnate. He can sit there, he knows every line of dialogue Courtney Cox has uttered as Gale Weathers. And it's almost scary. So I have to sometimes be up to date because I'm the Gale. I'm the Sid to his Gale.
No, okay.
So if there's a dialogue between, he sit there says something, Gail West would say, I was responding back what Sydney was saying. And that's how we go back and forth. So he wanted to do this thing. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'm already stretched thin, but let's go ahead and just do it. So that's Taymon King's baby. And he also is a writer and he has a publishing company called Taymon King Productions. So no, TK Publishing, excuse me. Sorry. There you go. In case he sees this, we're like, my shout out.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't know me?
Exactly. You'd be like, oh, so you okay, work. I'm gonna sit here and get you together in the next episode. Oh boy.
Mark, tell the listeners a little bit of like what the Midnight Social Distortion sounds like as far as like how your content goes, because it's like when I listen, I like the fact that it's like I feel like you talk more like from a personal level about things, whereas like when we do our podcast, it's usually more of a general level. But I like it because it's like you feel like you're getting to know you in the episodes. So I feel like that's important for people to know.
Yeah, when I did the show, I wanted to do something that was different because, you know, when you guys came out, you know, you was kind of like on the fringe. You know, you guys were kind of like some of the people that were throwing those beacons out there because you've been at it for a minute. And so, because actually I started my Instagram page, I followed with you guys for, you know, first because, you know, you guys been around and I'm like, they know their shit. So, hey, they seem like they're cool peeps. But for me, I was like trying to figure out what can I bring different to the table of a horror podcast. And I tried to lead with Black gay characters in horror, and that has become a big focal point for me. But then I was like, there's others out there like that. So again, how can you brand yourself to bring in viewers? And I just said, you know, you've had a lot of crazy experiences, horrific experiences, and supernatural or otherwise, and just inject it in. Like, I've been on hiatus for a long time, but with the death of my brother, I already got an episode title with like movies that I'm going to talk about that he took me to go see and that we talked about. Like before he died, he was shocked that I had not seen Wednesday yet. He was like, how the hell have you not seen Wednesday yet? I'm like, I just been real busy. He said, I was sure your ass would have seen Wednesday by now. I mean, that's right up your fucking alley. I'm like, I know, man. It's just been like busy. So I'm gonna have an episode about that. But it's just I try to take a movie and try to correlate it to like what I was going through, and I just do regular reviews like everybody else do. And I try to give it a different like lens because there's certain movies that people do not like. I'm pretty apologetic for. As y'all know, I'm a Fred head. And I did a whole Freddy Krueger anthology type thing, and I talked about because people hate Freddy's Nightmares. I fucking love Freddy's Nightmares. And so it's just like, I mean, because it's just so many people shit on it. Like you have Friday the 13th, the series, they're like, oh, it doesn't have Jason in it, but it's a good show for its time, you know, and they're like, that's okay. But Freddy's Nightmares was just horrible. It was just so cheesy. I'm like, yo, I love that 80s cheesy horror shit. I love it. And Freddy's Nightmares, I tell people like, they were like, well, how do you explain Freddy's dead? Like, what happened to all the townspeople and this, that? Watch Freddy's Nightmares. It's not, it has never been said as canon there, but I'm just like, still, if you want to fill in that plot hole between Nightmare 5 and Freddy's Dead, watch Freddy's Nightmares because he was fucking with everybody. He was just going for like the teenagers at that time. He was fucking with everybody. So it makes sense for the town to become aware of him if he's constantly, you know, stepping outside his boundaries. And it's like, you know, all y'all gonna get this love. All y'all gonna get this, you know, so let's do it. So I tend to do that. I apologize. I review movies that people hate. Sometimes I'll, you know, will go into those in detail, stuff that they're probably like, well, I didn't need to know that, but it's good to know. And for movies that people might have loved, I might sit there and be like, y'all tried it. What movie was that recently came out that I was like, I don't see what the big deal was. I don't want to say Barbarian, but it was like, I love Barbarian, but it was like people would try to call it the next Malignant. I'm like, let Barbarian stand on its own. Let's just calm down a little bit, people. You know?
Have you watched it yet, Dave?
No, No,
He
and
started
Mark,
saying
you're
that.
the second person in 2 days to say that about Barbarian, actually, to me. Because
Yeah.
someone asked me yesterday if I saw it, and they were like, I don't get why everybody was going so crazy about it. I feel like people really want to love a movie right now, like a new film. So they're like, anything that comes out that kind of catches them, they go nuts over.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, about that, I don't want to tell you that's not. I always tell people when it comes to something, I'm like, don't rush to go see it, but see it.
Yeah.
I don't never tell nobody don't rush to go see it, but I'm like, if you're not in a rush to go see it, that's fine. I respect it, but see it when you're able to. I have one better than you, Dave. Don't anybody come at me on who listens to this. I have not seen Midsummer yet. I own the box set.
Okay.
I own the little, the A24 yellow thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't seen it yet because I'm scared that if I see it and I'm gonna be like, what's the big deal? That's one of the reasons why it's keeping me from watching it. Is because I'm like, I'm scared to go in there like it's not big deal.
I think it's the opposite. Well, I just from the people that I've talked to, because I really like that film, and everyone I talked to, I feel like everyone I talked to about it didn't really care for it. So I feel like I'm almost like explaining why I like it a lot. So I haven't really had that experience. I actually find a lot of people are like, yeah, Midsummer was okay. Hereditary was better. Everybody always says that every time we talk about it. I think you'll like it. I don't know. It's definitely.
I think you would like it too, because that was the same thing when I was watching it in the theater. I had texted you, Dave, and said, "Oh man, this movie would be right up your alley," because that's when it first came out, and I was just like, "All right, yeah, this would be a Dave film," but it's not bad. I think that you would kind of like you would say, "Okay, what's the big deal?" But you can probably still enjoy it because that's my feeling on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now I felt the same way about Hereditary because people like, you ever seen Hereditary yet? Well, Midsummer's coming out. You have to see Hereditary. I'm like, okay, I guess I would bought Hereditary. Fucking loved it.
Yeah.
I think the A24 is up there with a lot of the horror that I feel like I don't want to say people like us, but just people who truly love the genre. Get it? Like, it doesn't have to always be cheesy. It doesn't have to always be slash and gore and stuff like that. To me, the best horror is the shit that you cannot explain.
Exactly.
Leaves you with endings where it's just like, oh my God, like I don't know what to. I can't function right now. That's why I love stuff like Black Mirror. I can't binge something like Black Mirror. I have to watch each episode individually because after you leave the episode, you have to like
process it, right?
Process it. That's the perfect word for it.
Yeah, we talk about that quite a bit because like my favorite feeling is leaving a film and not knowing if I liked it or not, and just like needing time to like think about it, and or if like even if I did like it, just like that it keeps me thinking for like a while after. Like Brandon and I mentioned this like experience we had with the Suspiria remake, which I ended up falling on that I liked it quite a bit, but like I left that film thinking like, I don't know. I got to think. I got to think about it. And then like the next day, I was like, I actually really liked it. Actually, that made me think throughout the whole night. That's like the best experience for me now. Love the cheesy slashers, love all that stuff. But like anything that makes me actually think is gonna get a thumbs up in my book.
Because like I said, stuff like the Suspiria remake was also another one that I watched with a friend during COVID. We did this thing where we would sit there, put on a movie, and we would watch it together over the phone and stuff like that. And he was already a fan of it. And I was like, this movie, it's just the atmosphere is right for the time, even though it was kind of like, I want to say like not dated, but it was probably a set in a different time period than contemporary. It was contemporary, but not like in the 2000s, something like that. But I enjoyed it for what it was. And the last scene, it was like you earned that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Watching all of that, and you like, oh, it's boring, it's slow. It's like, no, you have to build up to something like that. And another movie that people like, I'm glad that people are discovering again and again and again is The Invitation. Not the one with Natalie, what's her name from Game of Thrones, but the one. With,
I know exactly. Brandon, you had actually told me to watch that Invitation one. I'm trying to think of that guy's name. He was in
Logan Marshall Green.
Yeah,
I cannot believe I remember his name. The only reason I remember is because of
good.
I know he was on the OC. That's the first time I ever saw him, and so that's how I remember him. So,
bad with names.
That film was really good because it like you didn't know what was gonna happen next, and they just kept like and it was like the feeling you got throughout. It was like, oh shit, where's this going? You know, I think what like we're identifying is like, I think nowadays it's all about the experience more than anything. Like for me, like I like the experience of being like, what was going on? I have no idea what's going on. I got to think about it later. I got to process this. Or the experience of like, that was super fun. It was just cheesy and funny, or just gory as hell.
Yeah.
Like those are equal experiences to me. And I want an experience when I'm watching a film. I think things that just feel like, you know, going through the motions, I don't have time for it. Like there's so much out there to watch, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like right now a film that's getting trashed like really bad is Skinamarink. You know what I mean? Have you watched it yet?
I have not watched it yet because when it premiered, all this was going on the when it premiered on Shudder. Because I wasn't going to the theater to watch it, but that's a whole nother story I can tell you on another time. But it wasn't playing in the theaters when they first dropped tickets. And then at the last minute they put it in the theaters and I could not get off work for it. So it was like, I'm gonna wait till Shudder hits and I can watch it there. So hopefully I'm gonna get into it soon, because
definitely two sides, you know what I mean? And like I told Dave, like you have to turn every light off in your house, have that on blast, because it might not have that same effect for a lot of people, but it definitely brings you back to your childhood. Like if you're a young kid and you just thinking back, like, and you're in a dark house in the middle of the night, and then you're just scared like to get out of your room, like, you know, you had to turn the TV on just to feel safe. This is what that movie represents, and I understand what people don't like. There's nothing much happening, but it gives you that experience of being a kid. You know what I mean? That's all I can say. That definitely trips you out.
But to add on to that, that's the type of movie that I like. For like I was at The Invitation, it's like there's not a scare every 5 minutes, and I like when stuff builds and builds and builds, and then when it gets to the point where it's like you can't escape this now, you're here, and then you just have to sit there and just roll with it. Stuff like what movie was that? Like I watched Audition recently, like a couple of years ago for the first time.
Oh, the Japanese film.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a slow burn.
Slow burn, and you get there, it's like holy crap.
Yep.
And another movie on the flip side, Cloverfield. I remember when Cloverfield first came out, and a lot of people like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, would you really be running around with the camera the whole entire time? Yes, I'm that person. I would be the one with the camera, because I was the guy who was running around camera like on campus, because I was in college when I came out. I would have a camera with me and I would record all of our experiences. So I was like, I would be the guy that would turn around and be like, oh shit, there's a big ass monster in the sky. He's dropping off parasites. Let's run. When you with the tape will run out, not necessarily. If you stop it when you're in mid-run, you still have tape. And you have battery, and I had pockets of batteries with me every time I went out somewhere. So plausible as fuck to me.
And I literally having this found footage conversation yesterday about like, because there's a new film that just came out recently, and they were trying to explain away like why they would be recording during the specific things, because I guess a lot of like our complaints usually after a found footage is like, why were they recording this whole time? But like in all honesty, like that's a thought we have for like a second, and then I kind of just forget about that thought and I just get involved in the film. Like Cloverfield, that is the exact example I gave, because it's like, I thought that like they really felt like, who would really be filming this? But at the same time, I didn't care after like 5 minutes. But like, because it was like, that was a fun film. I watched Deadstream last night, which I don't know why I slept on it for so long. I liked it. It was fun. It was, Mark, I'm getting the sense you did not.
I like the movie. I like the setup. I like how everything, but the main character, I wanted to punch him in his face.
I felt like that was the point, right?
I mean, because that and what's the other movie that came out on Shudder? The one about the
Scare Package.
Not Scare Package. I actually love Scare Package. It's the one about the girl who was the Airbnb. I'm sorry, y'all. My brain's
cheat. I might shut her up.
On Shudder.
Yeah, it came out on Shudder. It starred this girl it was this couple who were YouTubers, and their YouTube channel was going to different people's Airbnbs and checking them out. And they got to one where the girl was very unhinged, like she was crazy, and they were recording stuff. Sometimes you're like, okay, why are you recording this now? But it's a complete found footage movie until you get to the end. But you kind of ask yourself, like, why are you recording this? But like Dave said, you forget about it. You forget about it after a minute.
Yeah, you don't need, I mean, that's the whole point of movies. You like suspending belief for a little bit. So like, you know,
Right.
it's horror. Come on. Like
Yeah,
I'm
it's
supposed to
horror.
believe that zombies and demons are really real, but then I'm gonna like critique about why they're filming a segment in a found footage film.
And one last thing about that before we move on, because I want to just keep y'all
Yeah,
on the
I know.
subject though.
You're
But it
good.
just
Right.
like people thought when Diary of the Dead was announced, it was like, who's gonna be really running around with the camera during a zombie apocalypse? I said, you'd be surprised because
Yeah.
but it made sense to me. It made sense, and I kind of out of those later
Yep.
Romero movies, that's
Yep.
the one I like the most is Diary of the Dead.
Yeah, I did like that one actually. And you know, you're right. Like in today's society, everybody would probably be filming everything.
And
We would all be filming.
that's the thing that that's the complaint or that's the complaint, but like the criticism that I don't get. Like a lot of the stuff that's going on nowadays, the riots, not the riots, but like the police killings and stuff like that.
Yeah. Protests and everything. Yeah.
We're recording everything, and sometimes you sometimes ask yourself, okay, if you see 5 other people recording, then you don't have to record. Go help intervene or something like that. But at the same time, sometimes you're like you can't trust that next person because they might not turn their footage over when it's needed. So some people just feel like it's their duty to record. So.
And it's also like the safer thing to do for some people, maybe. So it's like, I'm going to do something. And I think this is about as far as I can go because it might not feel safe to do the other things sometimes.
Exactly. That's true. That's true.
So I guess we should transition into the theme of today's episode, Black horror. And I'm going to be really ambitious and I want to kind of start from the beginning. So, or as much of a beginning as I can kind of put together here. So actually the first thing I was going to bring up to kind of get you guys' thoughts about this is like zombie films. So it's funny that you just brought up Diary of the Dead, because like if we think about like what people consider to be the origins of zombies, I don't know, like what do you guys like feel is like the origin of zombies? And I know horror noir kind of went over this with like White Zombie and everything. So like it's in the zombie genre itself, it's like rooted in Black history, right?
Voodoo
Because it's hoodoo, right? Like, so I don't know if enough people know that, like how the zombies kind of like evolved.
Yeah, I'm still learning myself, but I do know I'm constantly being told about this. Like, they all because they originate in I don't want to say the Caribbean, maybe.
Yeah, Haiti. It was like Haitian.
Yeah, Haiti. Yep. Haiti. That's what I'm thinking of. Haiti.
Haitian
So,
slaves. Yeah.
So it originates there, but the problem is that if you notice that every movie that came out, like between when the 60s and 50s, because I came across a movie that this past weekend on Scream Factory TV that really went with the tropes. They had this voodoo priest kidnapping virginal blonde women to sacrifice to their god because there was something wrong with the island and they needed a virgin blonde woman. So my modern mind was like, so how often do you have to do the sacrifice? And if you're in an island where there's no virgin blonde women, would you guys already be like demolished? It didn't make any sense.
Do you remember what film that was?
Ooh, I think it's I Eat Your Skin because Elvira was hosting.
Okay,
the main reason why I jumped in on it.
Yeah,
I think it's I Eat Your Skin, and they had like this whole scene where there was like this big voodoo ritual going on, and everybody, Black and white people, were just in trance. They were just you can't just thinking like they were out there like on acid, like the hippies when they were on acid, they were just doing all that wild dance. It was all of that going on, and I was sitting in bed just chuckling like, oh god, we've come a long way. So but I think that people will feel like they came from the Haitian culture and whatnot, but because there's been stories about people who went to go get they would be pronounced dead, but they actually had a Haitian spell put on them, would be buried in a shallow grave and all that. The next thing you know, they're walking around the city or the countryside late that night, and then people were like, oh god, he was dead, but it probably was like some spell to make them like just they couldn't be they couldn't get a pulse or anything like that, or
Yeah.
you know, a heartbeat or something like that. So, but I think that Romero took it to the next level, because with Romero's zombies, I don't know where he got his idea to make them flesh-eating people. Even though that movie I just told you about, I Eat Your Skin, I don't know what year they came out. It was
Wait, so and there was another one that was super similar. That's why I asked. I think it was I Walk with a Zombie or something like that.
Was I Walk with a Teenage Zombie?
I forget exactly what the title was, but it was super similar to what you had just described. So there was like this whole genre of films back then that were like based on that like Haitian zombie, you know, that was like some Haitian practices of hoodoo, as you had mentioned, and kind of mixed also with like slavery, the Haitian slaves and like the anxiety. So I actually read something super interesting. There was this idea that when you died, you would be returned to Africa. But if you committed suicide, which I guess was kind of common at the time, obviously because of the conditions of being a slave and everything like that, you would actually, the thought was that you would be kind of trapped in your own body, but it was like their version of a zombie almost. Yeah. And then from there, it kind of evolved to this other thing, which is like the thing you were describing as far as like the voodoo religion and all that and that stuff, like a spell being put on the person. So like even within like the Haitian culture, zombies kind of evolved into something different. So it's kind of funny that it's like, it was this thing that started in a culture, but then also suddenly like ended up in like the horror genre, and we've been running with it since. But but you're right, with like Romero's film, even if I don't know if it was necessarily intentional, but he kind of flips the script, right? By having like a black protagonist.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm glad you went to that point, because mostly in those, especially with the history of voodoo themed films, even to this later, even modern times, people look at voodoo and hoodoo as like these horrible, it's kind of like the akin to witchcraft. You know what I'm saying? It's like you take something you don't understand and you just sit there and run with it and turn it into like this evil entity, this evil practice or whatnot. And in actuality is not that. It's just you know, somebody's misunderstanding of what goes on with these particular things. What movie was that? Actually in the book Horror Noire, Dr. Robert Armeens Coleman mentions that, you know, even with stuff like King Kong, you know, some of the earlier movies where you go somewhere, if a white person goes somewhere outside of the country, they go to some country in Africa and they pick up something, it's always a tribe of black people, or just maybe Ghanaians, or wherever country they're from. It's always this tribe of people who were usually like scary, you know. They were always trying to kill the white virgin female, like protect the white female and stuff like that. And that's where most of that stems from. It's just a misunderstanding, or just a not misunderstanding, but rather I can't think of the word right now, but just, you know, I don't understand what's going on here, so therefore I'm going to make it, you know.
You're exactly right. So that's something that like I think about a lot with, as far as like exactly what you described, and it goes back so far in history. And you know, this is not horror related, but like Rudyard Kipling like goes and, you know, he's writing about tribal people, and he's writing about as if almost like writing about them as if they're animals, right?
Exactly. That's the problem.
And that's kind of like, you would think that we've evolved so far from that, you know, we're, you know, eons away from like Darwinism and all that stuff, but we're still seeing these like tropes in our films, right?
Yes. And that's
like what we don't understand is like unsophisticated and beneath us.
Unsophisticated beneath us, and you know, we shoot at what we fear. You know what I'm saying? And we don't know how to, well, I say we, but certain people don't know how to process certain things that they don't understand. And taking race out of it for a little bit, for me personally, I've always kind of gravitated to stuff that I fear, except spiders. I don't look, I know enough about a spider. I don't need anything else to know that I fucking hate them. I abhor them. I have arachnophobia real bad, so I don't fuck with them. But anything like, if, for instance, if one of you guys told me that you were into, you know, let's just say y'all was like, I'm thinking about doing like, you know, a Celtic practice of, you know, witchcrafts like that. I would be like, okay, tell me about that. You know, not in a like in a nasty manner, but like, no, tell me about that because I want to know. You know, I'm always looking for. I was always the kid that would go get those Time Life books of mysticism, the supernatural and stuff like that. I always read about stuff like that, and that's why I was always I was always othered. It's because I wanted to learn more about the stuff that I didn't understand or that I feared, only because I'm pretty sure that it was you can find some type of good in it. And that's when I did my research on like black horror movies and horror movies in general. That's how I came across the whole misinterpretation of voodoo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And voodoo, because I'm not gonna lie, I was one of those like, yo, I don't fuck with that. That's something you don't fuck with.
Yeah.
Not realizing that some of our traditions are rooted in quote unquote root magic. You know, I don't know if any of you guys heard of the whole thing of like put black eyed peas in your wallet or your purse so you can bring in money into the new year. That's part of that. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
A lot of stuff that we do, even within the black church, even in just churches in general, a lot of stuff that we do is rooted in like some type of voodoo or hoodoo practice.
Okay.
And you know, so because one of my friends who brought me into the whole world of that, he told me that a lot of stuff folks do in church on Sunday there's like, you don't know, you're probably going to the sister that might be up there praising God at the highest in church, she might go to speaking in tongues and stuff like that. She might be at home doing root work, the root magic, you know. So it's kind of like if you haven't seen The Witches, the remake with Octavia Butler, no, not Octavia, but Octavia Spencer.
Yeah, the one that was on HBO.
Yeah, I feel like she was a root worker because she was aware of all of this stuff, and it wasn't like she was like, "Oh no, you can't do that." She was more along the lines, "I'm prepared for it. If it comes to me, I know what to do." So it's certain stuff that some people do right in movies and certain things that people just go and just, I don't know. But I try to just be like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, just an example, it's like something like the Serpent and Rainbow. I tell people, you know, go do your research. You know, they used to go on CBS back in the day, like, to learn more about this topic. Here's some library books you should go check out. I always tell people to do that. Like just for instance, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not trying to take this off of this, but I always tell people read about the inspired events before you sit there and tell people that there's actually Leatherface running around in Texas and backwoods somewhere, because it's not. You know what I'm saying? Just read about it before you sit there and start spouting out stuff. So
and you know, oh, go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
No, and just like I was saying, to bring up some of the voodoo stuff. I don't know if you're a gamer, Mark, but I'm not sure if you guys played like Resident Evil 5.
Yes.
When that one released, at that time when I was younger, I didn't understand why they were in Africa, why the zombies were, you know what I mean? But that was the practice of the voodoo stuff because it was coming off of part 4. Where I was kind of getting lost. I'm like, hey, they're not really zombies. They're just in a trance. Then it crossed over to 4 with it being in Africa with the voodoo seances and everything like that. So they definitely went through like each step to like kind of bring in a different look at how zombies were evolved. But if you haven't played part 5, definitely go out there and check it out.
Yeah, I remember that when that came out, I was upset with it for so many reasons because I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, but I wanted to play Shiva. I wanted to play her so bad, but I was like, she's just a side attachment to Chris, and I hate this side attachment feature, but it was just it goes into the whole narrative of, again, even though they try to make it good, like we're gonna justify us shooting up all these black people but having this black woman with him, but at the same time it's like, no, that's a whole other story. I'm not gonna try to tell you. That's another story.
When it comes down to, you look at it now, like, okay, they were trying to do something with it after you learn a little bit more, because like when you like you're right, when it first came out, it was like, oh, they're just shooting a bunch of black people, like what's going on?
But that's a whole, I would love to talk about y'all. That's probably an episode I could bring y'all on to talk about my podcast.
Well, I mean, and that's part of like what struck me about like the evolution of zombies and voodoo, because voodoo became its own little subgenre for a while too. And it's always this idea that the voodoo people who practice voodoo are evil, right? But like what kind of mentioning is like hoodoo and voodoo are not evil. Like hoodoo is actually something that like was used during slavery times here as like a protection. It was all about protection, right? And it still is. I mean, there are hoodoo curses, I guess, that can be evil, but like even Frederick Douglass meets somebody in the woods and he's like he's practicing hoodoo and he offers him protection or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the story is, but it's like something about protection, and it's about safety and like dealing with being mistreated and how you survive. And yet we've taken it and we constantly go into this idea that it's like evil, right? And it's like, so I wonder, like, at what point do we say, all right, we're far enough away from like the origins of it that it's okay to keep doing this trope because it's something of the horror genre? Or at what point do we say, like, we probably should get away from always depicting it this way because that's actually problematic? Like, I look at a movie like Skeleton Key and it's, you know, it's like, it's definitely utilizing that trope for the film. It does do some, like, there is some authenticity to like what they're talking about. I think like they have a little bit of it, but it's again, it's another depiction of it as evil. So like, is that helpful to it as a whole, or do we just ignore it at this point?
Some people love Skeleton Key. I'm not one of those people. I watched Skeleton Key, and my whole thing was because I'm all about New Orleans and all the mysticism and stuff like that comes out of. I love it, so I was here for it, and I got into it. I think that I guess my problem with it was the fact that you knew that something weird was going on, but when you get down to the meat and greet of a spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it yet, you realize where the evil's coming from. And then you get the explanation as to why they're doing it. Now, it depends on what you want, what you believe. Some people thought that was super cool. I didn't think that, because I would think that my personal thing was like, because somebody's like, for instance, I'm just going to just put it out there again, spoiler alert. Why would, because my first thought process, why would they want to possess a white couple each time and just live in their bodies?
Yeah, that was my thought too. I was like, why is this what their target is?
But then I thought about them. If I was in their shoes, I would not want to steal the souls or the bodies of the next generation of Black people, because they want to be able, they earned their right to live. We died so they could live. You know what I'm saying? We died and stuff like this so they can live. So I get that, but at the same time, when I got to that point with that narrative, I was like, but do I want to live in somebody's, like, constantly do this to people on a regular basis? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's sometimes like, it's like, I don't want to just go ahead and die. You know what I'm saying? Just go ahead and cross over, because I feel like I could be more of a not a hindrance, but what's the word? I will be more of a help to my generational kids, my descendants, if I was on the other side, guiding them instead of me constantly doing this over and over again, because it's kind of like it's self-serving at that point. You know what I'm saying?
So essentially, they were taking these bodies, like they perceived power, like instead of being in the roles of like servants and butlers, they were getting into roles of power, but they weren't doing anything with that power.
They weren't, because right? I don't, because to be honest with you, I don't know if they were out there putting charities for Black owned businesses, or charities for like Black orphanages or something like that, or anything like that. I don't know if they were doing that. That's awesome, but at the same time, it's like I would personally get tired of it. And like the last body, I would probably be like, yo, I'm going to bequeath all of this money that we've earned after all these decades or whatnot to, I think it was wasn't there a Black nurse also there that she was that Kate
yep, there was.
I would have just left everything to her and like, do what you will. I'm done. I don't want to have no more parts of this, because like I would get tired, because you have to find somebody who is gullible enough to sit there and fall for the stuff. And it's just it's a lot of work. And it was just like, but at the same time, again, like you mentioned, Dave, the narrative was hoodoo is evil. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
and they didn't. So exactly, they had an opportunity to actually like redeem that a little bit and make it like these characters redeemable, but instead they just kept them as evil, and that felt a little bit like, all right, so how is this helpful to this whole narrative? Like, as far as the idea of that. So yeah, it kind of goes into that. it's like they had a chance and they didn't take that
They
chance.
didn't. That's my personal opinion on that. I was
Yeah,
like,
no, I
like
think that's a
said,
great take.
it's a lot of people out there I love to death who love the movie. I'm like, I just can't get into it. I watched it and I was like, I got to the end, like, nope, I can't. So
So let me transition us off of zombies a little bit and get to Blaxploitation.
Okay.
So a number of Blaxploitation films that people are pretty aware of, and there's actually a number that I've only just recently discovered. So I mean, everyone kind of knows Blackula, I feel like, at this point, at least. I've seen Blackenstein getting some love this year. People seem to be talking about that film a little bit. Mark, what are some of your favorites? You have some off the top of your head?
You mean horror Blaxploitation, just Blaxploitation in general? Okay. Blackula's right up, Blackula and Scream are right up there. Sugar Hill, which is also good because that's something that shockingly is PG. But the zombies in it, see, that's how you use zombies. You talk about, you can just jump back to zombies for a second. That's how you use zombies. She was a voodoo queen, and she got the zombies to come back to do her dirt because they were terrifying, and they weren't eating people up or anything like that. They were just beating everybody's ass. You know what I'm saying? It was just along the lines of like, I have an army of people who could sit here and just destroy you because you did wrong. You did wrong, and I'm just going to use. It's kind of like what Brandon said earlier. It's protection. I don't know if David used. One of y'all said it was about protection. I just feel like she used them in a manner that was like, I can vibe with this. Now, some people probably be like, oh, it's still Blaxploitation. It's still, this and that. But I'm like, yeah, but I always tell people for every ganja and hess, we gotta have something like Sugar Hill. For every Get Out, we have to have something like what's that movie on Netflix? I'm gonna just throw something out there. Bad Hair on Hulu. It's just you gotta have your, you gotta have your good balance of horror. You know what I'm saying? You can't just always be talking about like, the injustice of Black people and everything like that when you do the horror movie. But
like Get Out. Like not every film can be Get Out because eventually people will get tired of that. And like Brandon, I don't know, how did you feel? Because I know I'm trying to remember if it was which one it was that came, if it was Us or no, I think it was more recently, but like you had kind of heard that too. Like people were kind of saying like, I hope this isn't going to be another film about like how bad white people are to Black people, right?
Yeah, a lot of because that's the thing. I work in a hospital and I know one of the guys that I work with, his father, when he seen Get Out, he thought it was like a whole different type of movie, and he had watched it and he goes, oh, wait a minute, like why is it this way? But why is it like we're picking on someone? And I'm like, all right, well, obviously, it's from a different time. So it's like some people won't understand like what they're trying to like do with the process of the films. So it's like it becomes a hard discussion to have with certain people, And so
I don't have a problem discussing with people. I initially, Brandon, I did, but it's like I always tell people sometimes like, well, there's certain movies. Here's my thing about Get Out and Jordan Peele and the trap that a lot of people tried to put him in. He did Get Out, and the thing about Get Out was it was something that we as a culture needed. And I think that America itself needed to be woken up a little bit, just see like, this is what y'all be doing. This is the mess, the fuckery y'all be doing sometimes. It's not that extreme, but it's farther than the extreme that the movie presented. You know what I'm saying? So for me, stuff like Get Out, I think my issue with Get Out, it's not an issue, it's the post Get Out, is that people went into Us expecting another commentary on race relations. And Jordan Peele always said that Us was about the dark side of ourselves. That's not just with Black people, but just people in general. You know what I'm saying? And how what happens when we tend to ignore that darkness within ourselves. But people looking for another Get Out. And it's like he don't want to do that again. You know what I'm saying? And it's like he's already told their story. And then you had all these copycats come out and whatnot. And then it kind of got a little, like, I'm not trying to tell people not to tell their story. As long as your story has something to say and it, and it could get the point across without beating somebody upside the head. Sorry to throw this at them, but Black Christmas 2019 is a prime example of that. I know a lot of people who did not like that movie because it was not, it could have been something else besides Black Christmas. You say Black Christmas, when you have to bring the shit, you have to bring the pain, 2006 Black Christmas was excellent, but it was his own thing. And even though I feel like the 2019 was his own thing, it was still trying to do too much and not the right movie. But then you have stuff like Nope, because I had just got off the phone with a friend who went into Nope expecting another Get Out type thing. It didn't make any sense. There was, I mean, what was he trying to say? Hollywood is fucked up. You know what I'm saying?
That's what it was.
That's what it was. He was like, well, I didn't get that. He was like, what does this mean? I'm like, but dude, you got to understand that Jordan Peele did what he had to do. He said what he had to say with Get Out, and he's moved on from that. And so Tanana Abdul said it best. She said, Black history is Black horror. So that's up. But she will also add to that, but it doesn't, Black horror does not necessarily have to add to be all about our Black history. It's just that we want to play in this sandbox as much as everybody else do, and we want to have the opportunity to tell our stories. And I feel like that was done better with, like you asked earlier about Skeleton Key, like when do we get to a point where we can sit there and say, like, we can still tell this particular story but not have it be problematic. And that all boils down to put more Black people behind the camera. Put more Black people on the producer seat, and put more Black people, like read scripts by Black people who actually know how to deal with hoodoo and stuff like that. Like for instance, on P Valley, one of the characters on there does root work, but it's not like he's out there with, like, running around with a lion cloth and taking shit every 5 minutes and stuff like that. It's just, you would look at it like it's a massage he's giving somebody, but he's actually practicing root work to get people to calm down and just relieve stress and everything like that. Get somebody that's going to do it in a sensible manner where it's not evil and we're not end up becoming like the Magical Negro or something like that and all these other movies and stuff. So it's just but I'm sorry, but the reason why I got on that, the Blaxploitation.
No, but you just actually brought up the point, a point I wanted to make about Blaxploitation with the Jordan Peele example. I think that's great because Blaxploitation is basically rooted in this idea that we're going to make films that are made by Black people with starring Black people, because we're not included in mainstream films. And then when they did start to try to integrate into mainstream films, there was this idea that, like, no, we want to stick with these and we want to keep our culture. But they were like using these stereotypes to identify their culture, and they were like hyper focusing on those stereotypes and amplifying those stereotypes to the point where it was like, I think it was losing its point.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like a film like Abby is a Blaxploitation film, and she is so hypersexualized, and like everybody in the film super horny, and it's like, it's a problem. How much so? Like, because, or at least the way that I viewed it, because I was like, this is the representation that people are seeing of what these films are about, and I don't know that it helps anything. And the same with like JD's Revenge. I actually like JD's Revenge, but he's like, he's hitting his wife, and like there's like domestic abuse and stuff like that. It's like, I feel like at some point, you got to break out of it. You can't keep making the same kind of films. Like, it loses its point. And if, like with Jordan Peele, I feel like that's why he wants to move away from just making Get Out over and over again, because at some point it will lose its point, or it will be like hard for people to digest because it's too much, right?
Yeah, but I think that Get Out made this point, but it's going to be movies that's going to come out with something else. It's going to make the exact same point, but in a different manner. Stuff like Abby, I think gets a lot of love because I think it gets a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't get a lot of flack because, one, a lot of people have not seen it, and then two, the behind the scenes situation that happened with it, because Warner Brothers thought they were trying to do a clone, a remake or a copy of The Exorcist at the time, and they had them take all the stuff out, but it was clearly not The Exorcist with a Black woman. It's not that. I mean, she's possessed by the devil, but at the same time, she's not out here spewing green vomit on people and doing 30-degree turns. It's just that you know, again, that's something that I would leave to somebody else to talk about, because the thing about Abby that I think a lot of people were upset about was the fact that a Black woman could be sexualized, or she wants to have a sexual experience and stuff like that, and for it to be considered demonic and evil is the problem. Because I don't know, because she was she a preacher's wife or something like that, or
something like that. Yeah.
And so she treated her husband dirty, and she was going to have sex with all these different men. It's like that's another level of demonization in the Black community that is still going on to this day, because you have a lot of women, let's just replace her being a demon to being a bitch and a hoe. You know what I'm saying? So I always told my friends, if y'all would stop considering women as bitches and whores, or bitches and hoes, whatever you want to call them, skanks, whatever, you're gonna have a nice woman come your way. If you treat them right, when you talk about them in general, you're gonna have you put out what you get. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And the thing of the matter is that just because a woman wants to have sex as much as a man does not mean that she's a hoe. I always tell my friends, the logic that y'all have, that if you can go around and have a side chick and do all this dirty shit while your girl is at home, and the first time your girl goes out to do something and you sit there have this visceral reaction, that's a problem on your end, because you're doing the exact same thing that she did once, except you're doing it on a daily basis. But because we have different genitalia, you feel like she has to be demeaned and this shit on. I think that's, to me, the modern recollect is why people either champion Abby, or it depends on who you talk to, because some people probably feel like the same way you do, Dave, but a lot of people feel like Abby was like what's the word I'm looking for? There was a great film. Some people think it's detrimental, but some think it's also still a great film that did not get the chance it needed to, be examined, like other films are doing. Speaking of which, like we mentioned Blackula. I told people, I think in the last podcast I was on, Midnight Mass, we were discussing Blackula. Actually, the conversation was about Ganja and Hess. To me, I don't want to say Ganja and Hess was anti-Blackula. It goes to what you were saying earlier, Dave, about how it didn't play on the stereotypes. That's why it bombed. Because you have Blackula, which was about this, African prince who goes to London to talk about the slave trade and whatnot, and try to get Dracula to help with the slave trade. Instead, he gets bit and put in the coffin, and then we fast forward to 1970s Los Angeles, and he arises from his grave, but you kind of see like all these stereotypes running around him. You see like pimps. You might see a little. Even the gay character of why is my mind going blank right now? Y'all gotta excuse me.
No, there was a gay couple
opening scene.
That was the first.
After the opening scene. Yeah, when he was I think he was this Bobby dude silent in the house and everything.
His name was Bobby, because I did a whole piece about him.
Okay.
Bobby was a stereotypical gay man. Then you have the black male lead. I forget. I know his last name is Marsula or something like that, and he was calling Bobby the F word here and there and stuff like that. Like, why would two Fs want to do this? So it had its issues. But when you go, but I still love Blackula for being, it's still a damn good story, you know what I'm saying? Because it's still relevant to this day. That's why they're working on like another sequel. They just dropped the sequel graphic novel for it. So it still has relevant themes, is what I'm trying to say. But then you have something like Ganja and Hess. Ganja and Hess was very artsy, but it still told a story about Black people dealing with a horrific situation in America in the time period, except that it wasn't so on the nose. You have Dr. Hess, who is he's like the opposite of what other Black horror film characters were at that time.
Yeah.
He had his own mansion. He lived out in the country. He had a decent
Yeah,
damn
so good.
job.
Mhm.
He had means, you know what I'm saying? He had charity events and stuff like that. And then you have his my mind's going blank again. His Bill Gunn, who directed the movie, his character, who I didn't realize at the time was I didn't know the director was bisexual. I didn't know that. So you have him who is like this, you know, kind of off kilter assistant who has all these wonderful stories to tell, but you can tell there's something off about him. Then you bring in Ganja, who is Marlene. I'm sorry, y'all. My mind's
No, it's okay.
Don't worry about it.
So you have her as Ganja, and she comes in and she gives like another aspect of Black life. You know, she came from nothing, was told she was going to be nothing only because of the jealousy of her beauty. And the line that she says about like, you know, I just know my mom's pretty much treated like a disease. And I just said from that point forward, I'm going to just, you know, utilize that to my ability because, you know, I'm just going to just, you know, make them sick of me to the point where they, you know, so just give in. But it's just like they all have their ways of dealing with this vampirism thing. Now, Bill Gunn never got a chance to deal with it, but it all goes back to like little small, subtle stuff. Because when Bill Gunn's character was getting ready to, like, he was in the tree doing all the crazy stuff, and Dr. Hess told him, I need you to get down because I'm a private man. And if there's a dead body on my property, me as a Black man in this neighborhood is going to be a big problem. And it's just something just so simple as that because, you know, yeah, he might get all the money and the means though, but he's still a Black man in America in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And then you have Ganja, who is coming in and she is, you know, she's just, you know, not used to that really well, but she's gonna utilize it to her advantage. You know, she sat there, the butler. I kind of enjoy this scene because I'm like, you know, she's just looking at him like, you don't have any type of, you know, you don't have any personality. You just the beck and call of this Black man over here. You know, she just said, well, I'm going to treat you like shit. You know, and so you know, I can't get this chance again. So I'm just going to treat you like shit. I'm just going to treat you like a real butler and stuff like that. But then the only person left standing, spoiler alert again in the movie, the only person left standing is Ganja because she was like, I've come from nothing. I want to see the world, and I'm not gonna just sit there and just let this take me out. I'm gonna take all this because now she's married to Dr. Hess, so she's getting everything he has left over, and she can just sit there and just live to be the person that she knew that she was supposed to be. And it's stuff like that you know, you have stuff like Ganja Hess, you have stuff like Black. This goes back to what I was saying about, you know, you can have your hereditary and you can have your malignant, you know what I'm saying? You can have your, you know, it just goes hand in hand. But I feel like the Blaxploitation period was a stepping stone, but it still was like we got our pinky toe in, but we have to, you know, keep pushing because as long as we get, you know, these characters on the screen of Black history, I mean, a Black horror and whatnot, and then we continue to, but we still got to get behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying? Even though the Blackula and Scream, I believe, were both directed by Black people, I still feel like they still wanted to get, you know, behind the scenes, to do something like Ganja Hess, which was directed and written by a Black man, and you saw how great it turned out until all the shit behind the scenes destroyed it and stuff like that. It took to like now for most people to discover this movie. But you know, here we are, you know, Blaxploitation has this moment in history, but it's like it still fell to the injustice of, you know, Black pop culture and whatnot. And before that, you have movies like The Son of Miyagi, which I finally saw this past
I haven't seen that one yet. That's on my list.
YouTube.
Now, what age did you start watching these films at? You know, because for me, it was like growing up in it. Like I was born in '86, so watching films in the '90s, like these weren't my go-to films at the time. Like, you know what I mean? So it was just like I noticed, like you said, like some of these films are just kind of like watching now. Like, so what age was it that you started watching these films?
You mean horror in general? Or
no, like the Black like Blackula and stuff like that.
I want to say it was late because I'm not gonna lie. The poster of Blackula scared the shit out of me, and they actually played Blackula on Saturday afternoon after cartoons, and I wasn't used to seeing. You know, I was used to seeing shit like Interview with the Vampire and the Lost Boys and Fright Night, even though they were like demonic in nature. But I've never like seeing William Marshall. He grew more hair where hair was supposed to be, and he just turned, it was like scared the shit out of me. And the scene in Blackula with the woman coming out of the morgue at the mortician, that was the first time I seen a cut of Blackula early on in the day, but I didn't pay no attention to it. I just saw this black man running around with an afro in the cape. I'm like, that's new. But when she came out that thing screaming at him, I was like, okay, I'm out. I can't do this right now. And I have been watching movies like Night of the Demons and Nightmare on Elm Street, shit like that. Like it wasn't nothing, but it was like, I guess because I wasn't used to seeing black people like that.
Yeah, it was different. It was like it was the same for me when Candyman came out. It was totally different. It was just like, okay, like, and I even told Tony Todd, I was like, like. Some people looked at him as a monster, but like I just looked at him as like some regular guy that was on the street. Like, you know what I mean? He goes, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when Candyman came out, that shit fucked me up for life too. And another movie that fucked me up that a lot of people in the black horror circles talk about a lot is Death by Temptation. And I've said it on every podcast and every article that I've written that I have not seen that movie since I first saw it back in 1991. Because it still to this day scares the shit out of me. The Temptress is a demonic. The makeup at that time period was so ahead of its time. And I think that's another reason why I had not seen Demons until I was an adult, because I was in college, because I saw it again. For some reason, Memphis decided to put on Demons late one night on Saturday Night Frights or something like that. And my mom was at home with us. And when I saw Rosemary for the first time as a demon, I was out. I was done. I was like, what happened to her face? I was like, oh my God. I just seen like, Fright Night, Amy, when she's in full like vampire mode. I'm like, I done seen all these white folks turn to different shit and it didn't bother me. But when I see somebody black does it, was bothering me. And I guess it's because like I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm more likely going to see something like that before I would see a Amy or a Trash from Return of the Living Dead or something like that. It was like I could go to church tomorrow and it'd be this black guy with the afro, and I could sit there looking like, oh my God, that's Blackula. He doesn't have his cape on, so it was just scary. But I guess it's because I've always told that black people didn't survive these things, and they never made it to the end. And it just I'm like, so this is what happened to black people in horror movies. You know what I'm saying? But nowadays looking at it, it's like, okay, I'm glad we have a Rosemary in there fucking up shit. I'm glad we got Blackula up there, like beating folks' asses and stuff like that, and just knocking folks out left and right. Because to me, Black is one of the coolest goddamn villains of all time. Even though the name Blackula itself is kind of like people might look at it as problematic, but I'm like, yo, give it here. I love it because I know I know he didn't take on the Blackula moniker until the end of Blackula Scream, but Prince Mamawaldi, that's my Dracula. You know what I'm saying? So his story is a little bit more tragic.
Yeah, and I love that you just picked it up. Like you just talked about the topic about like us dying first. I had noticed that you put up a post of the book, The Black Guy Dies First. Have you finished it yet? And would you recommend it?
I'm gonna recommend it. I haven't finished it yet. I'm gonna recommend it because I tell people horror noir, The Black Guy Dies First is like the layman's terms of horror noir. If you feel, because horror noir is technically a textbook for like college. It reads like a textbook, but I love reading shit like this, so it don't bother me. But if you want to sit there and read something that has the same information but just breaks it down and makes it more of a conversation piece, I suggest The Black Guy Dies First, because if you're familiar with Mark Harris, who does blackhorrormovies.com, his reviews are scathing. So I suggest that all the movies we talk about, go and see what he had to say about it. Like the Skeleton Key and Abby and stuff like that. Go and see what he had to say about it, because his reviews are scathing. And it's just like I've done a panel with him on a Zoom call one time, and he looks very chill. But those are people who can probably check the the best. And so it's like, I don't ever want to cross his path, because I know he would probably go from chill mode. And I think the worst time to check somebody is when they're in chill mode, because you haven't seen them at 100. When they're in chill mode, they're checking you to the point where you have to sit there, just shut up. It's just like, yo, I don't want no parts of that. But that's what the book is, because I read certain snippets of it and certain, like parts of it. I suggest it to you. I suggest to everybody, because it's needed. And I feel like they touched on stuff that like a lot of other books didn't. Like, for instance, they have a whole chapter about representation of Black queer characters in horror. And that brought a tear to my eye, because I tried to do something like that with the article I wrote, and there was only so much that I had at the time. But given the fact that a lot has happened with Black queer characters since I wrote that article, and we're more present now, and the fact that we have a section in a book that has going to get a lot of eyeballs, it just, it just, I can't thank them enough for that. But yeah, I do recommend it. I'm just going to tell y'all guys right up front that the first Black guy that I saw survival horror movie was Roger from Night of the Demons. And I think that's why I love that movie so much, because he was the first Black guy I saw survival horror movie when I was that age, because my cousin got me into horror and we watched that movie a lot. I used to be terrified of it though, but I got to the point where I can watch it while I'm asleep. I literally put on Night of the Demons to sleep. Not just because it was boring.
Comfort horror now.
Comfort horror, right? So and the first Black female I saw survival horror movie was Yvonne from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. Because usually it's either the final girl and her guy. It's never two final girls. And that was the movie that kind of gave us that first. Then I went to go see Tales from the Crypt Demon Night when I was I went by myself. Our theater didn't give a fuck back then for it burned down. It was like, oh, okay, money, just give us to it. So I went to go see it, and I remember watching the trailer and stuff like that, the TV spots, and I was like, I had a huge crush on Jada Pinkett when I was a kid. Huge crush. Like, people saw her on, they were like, oh, the first one I saw her in was like a Low Down Dirty Shame. I'm like, you didn't see her in A Different World? I followed her from A Different World to A Low Down Dirty Shame to whatever else she was in. I was a huge Jada Pinkett fan today. So when I saw her at Demon Night, the first thought that came to my mind was, she's gonna die. Jesus Christ, she's gonna die. So then, because I thought the main girl was gonna be Brenda Bake's character, because you see the main shot with them all looking at the window. She's standing there right beside William. I forget his name, but the Breaker. She was standing beside Breaker. So I'm like, okay, she's the main lead and this and that. Then I see, CCH Pound. I'm like, oh, she's gonna die too. I'm like, all these folks gonna die. It's gonna be just him and her and this and that. She's the first female taken out. I'm like, oh. All the ass is gonna die then. You know what I'm saying? Because they're not gonna let a Black woman survive by herself. No, they're not gonna do that. So imagine in the theater, and it gets down to just Breaker and Geraldine, and then the kid takes out Breaker. I'm like, I went from like this to like, oh God, please make it to the end of the movie. Oh God, please make it. And then when she sat there and took him out, and then she left, and when she got on the bus, she did something that I'm just like, hold on one second. She protected the bus. And I'm like, oh my God, I fucking love this. And then to see that she's gonna have to meet a Black collector eventually, I was like, that's the sequel I want to see. Then we got Bordello Blood. I'm like, oh fuck. But it was just like, seeing Geraldine survive that movie did something to me. Then I'm just gonna give y'all about the history of my Black survivors. Then I saw what's the name of the movie? Halloween H2O. Again, LL Cool J's gonna get it. He's
LL Cool J, yeah.
And he originally was supposed to die, but they had a clause in his contract saying he couldn't die.
Is Halloween like one of the rare franchises that does that twice? Because then the next film was Resurrection, and we had another one. Yeah,
actually both him and Busta Rhymes' character is supposed to have died.
Yeah.
But Busta Rhymes tested so good with the audiences that
Yeah,
they
they
went
couldn't
back
kill
and
him
they
off.
shot him.
Mhm.
And so I think that's the only franchise. But then Nightmare on Elm Street did it too, because you got
Kincaid.
Kincaid, because for a long time I was one of those people like when he died in the next movie, so he doesn't count as a final boy.
That's how I always felt about it too.
Yeah.
They immediately like nothing,
took
like
him out unceremoniously, and I was
it's
like,
almost like I'm sorry we didn't do this last film. Let's take care of this right
Sorry
now,
we didn't
right?
do this.
exactly. But I always tell people the reason why Freddie took out Kincaid because he knew Kincaid was the strongest.
Yeah. Yep.
With Kristen and Kincaid, he took out Kincaid first because Kincaid was the strongest, and he took Kincaid off guard because Kincaid mentally had him like, this motherfucker's gone. I ain't got to worry about him no more. This is just, he took him off guard. That's the reason why he did him first, and that's it. That's the only reason why I can accept his death being the first one, because Freddie knew he couldn't take him by himself. Couldn't take him. When he was alert.
Yeah.
He was an alert. But then you had Max from Nightmare on Elm Street, who survived, even though he wasn't in the thrust of everything, he still survived. Then you had Yvonne. Then you had Doc from Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. I don't count Dr. Hefner from New Nightmare because again, she was kind of like a villain herself to some degree, but she survived. So I mean, I give her props. I did a whole thing with all these Black horror survivors though, but
Yvonne was cool because she was like not like your stereotypical African American like side character in the film. Like she was kind of cool and like smart.
Yeah, she was.
So I thought she was like a different type of character.
She is, because but the thing of the matter is that she also represented the "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" But to give you to give you points, Dave, because you do have a good point. She wasn't always "Are you okay?" She was more along the lines of like, "This shit is crazy."
Yeah, like the
what
reality
you're talking about
almost.
is you're crazy right now, and what you're saying doesn't make any sense. So she wasn't always asking Alice, was she okay? She was always being like, you need to snap out of this shit. You are pregnant and you got a baby, you got to raise and stuff like that. You got to stay focused. So I would give her that, and I think that's why a lot of people don't give her that. Because the "Are you okay? Are you okay?" and stuff like that. Even Brandy from I Still Introduced Last Summer.
Yeah.
She was like, "Are you okay?" But then after the first "Are you okay?" she was like, "Okay, girl, you tripping now."
Yeah.
I'm trying to have fun and you are pissing me off right now. And so it's like, then when she gets to the end of the movie, they realize that shit's to hit the fan. And Julie was like, "I was trying to protect you. It's too late for that now." Now the whole process is us trying to survive this shit that you got us in. Like, okay, now okay, cool. So when she got thrown through the glass, I thought she got sliced up. So when she showed up at the end of the movie, I was like, thank God she played dead. And
No, I saw an article that had like 50 horror movies, but I seen like it was like 5 out of 50 of them have like Black characters who die first. As it turns out, like Black characters don't always die first in horror movies. They're now kept around more for like comic relief or like the jokes or protect like the main character until they're killed off. So it seems like now that we're going further, like they're not like really killed off like first, like how they were back in the day. Right. So I think that like we talking about and like bringing it into like Brandy and everything like that, having those characters stick around, like they also had to play a role. Like Brandy. You have Brandy. She's a musician. Like she's a singer, R&B singer. She had her own show, Moesha. It seems like you have to be on that type of level to kind of like survive or do anything. Like we said, like LL Cool J, Rhymes. Yeah. Like, cause I feel like some regular dude, say like the Friday the 13th remake, like the Fast Kid.
Oh man.
He got killed. Like, you know what I mean? But I feel as though like if he was like a little bit like more famous, to survive. But you had Trey Songz, he died.
I was just trying to think of which one that was. Yeah,
Trey Songz died in that.
That was the stupidest death though, Brad. I was like, but I had to give him props because I'm like, you was driving and you got knocked off the road and you died in the accident. You didn't get sliced up or anything like this. So I was like, okay, you didn't get cut up. But you were still brought back for food. So it was just like, but at the same time, I was like, watching, I said, oh, how he's gonna get it? Because I was like, I know he's gonna get it. And when he got it, I'm like, okay, at least he get cut up, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's good. But the other person who didn't make it, I was shocked because she get kept up to the last minute. Freddy versus Jason.
Oh, Kelly Rowland.
Kelly
Yeah.
Rowland, yeah.
I was so hoping for her to win,
I was too. Yeah.
but
I
then
like
a lot
that
of people,
character.
yeah, a lot of people
If it was
hated her
Beyonce,
first.
if it was Beyonce, she would have survived.
She would survive because you know that Brandon, y'all already know the Beehive would have showed up and has turned the whole goddamn theater out, and she'd have sat there got killed. They'd have turned that theater out. And I'd have probably like that dude on Mean Girls, like, Mom, help me.
Yeah.
You know, so but yeah, I was glad, I was upset that but the thing about it is I felt like her death was, I'm doing air quotes, earned. Because it led up to, you know, it pretty much was like everybody was there to see the fight.
Yeah.
Everybody was there to see the final fight between Freddy and Jason. And she was in the way.
Yeah.
She was technically in the way. And plus she was, you know, she said, you know, oh, he got this big old, and when Freddy sat, as soon as Freddy sat there, he bit back. I told my brother, I just shook, I said, Jason's behind her. He was like, no. I'm like, Jason's behind her.
Yeah.
And then so the friend was like, she turned around, bitch, move. I was like, oh my God. My brother started howling. He was like, damn, that's fucked up. I was like, dude, I knew he was behind her because she was talking too much. And Freddie was just like, go ahead and get out your way. And if for anybody who's never read the novelization of Freddy versus Jason, there's a line that was actually in the script they cut out. Freddy said after she got slammed, Kia killed in action. That's dirty. But
so here's the thing: like, you have Black actresses and actors that want to be killed off in these films because they grow up and they enjoy watching that, and then you know, like, when a kill scene comes on, you're like, that's something that you remember. And so that's what it was like with Scream 2. Like we just talked about Jada Pinkett Smith. Like, people are so shocked that she was killed first, and so in like a brutal way, but that's what she wanted. You know what I mean? She went to Wes Craven and said, you know, a lot of these films, like the kills don't look realistic. I want you to like really give it to me. Let's do this. You know what I mean? So you have to look at it that way too, because like even if I was in a horror movie, I know, like, I want somebody to take my fucking head off or whatever like that, because it stands out. But, you know what I mean? Like, if you're in that power and you're like, you're okay with it and you want to be killed off, but that's the main thing now what we have today. You know what I mean? Like, it's either get killed off first, or, you know what I mean, like, just have this brutal death. Like, you got to choose.
But I know, like, back in the day, because I think one of the reasons that I started Midnight Social Distortion is because of that, you know, trope, the Black guy always dies first. And I was always told, you know, Black people don't survive these movies. And so my first thing I did with Midnight Social Distortion was I did a blog, and I started doing Black people who survive horror movies. And I was like, oh shit, I only know 20, like, I only know like 20 or 30 some odd people, but some of them weren't directly involved in the action. Then you start watching more movies and you start realizing, oh, there's a survivor. Outside kept a list. And it wasn't like, but again, the takeaway, not the takeaway, the take back from that is that a lot of these were like trope characters, like you said, like
that's
Dave,
exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, you know, they're are you okay, girl, or they're the boyfriend, or the token Black guy in the group, or something like that, or, you know, and stuff like that. But then again, you realize that as I was going from like the 70s, because I included the characters of Blackula, and I haven't seen Blackenstein yet. So if I would do another list, I would include those. And then I'm the survivors of Son of Miyagi. You know what I'm saying? You know, you got to include those too, you know, now, because, you know, but there were all issues behind some of those characters. And it took me reading and watching horror noir to realize that, and just to be like, you know, you can give them props for surviving, but you also got to give them, you know, you got to look at it from all angles, you know, like, as much as we all love Kincaid, some people might sit there and look at Kincaid as being a loud Black man. But
time, I could see that.
I'm like, some people even felt like Kincaid coded as queer, because if you notice that every person in the group, I'm going sideways with this, but every person in the group of the Dream Warriors, they had an issue, and Kincaid's issue was his anger. But then you don't know, we all get angry sometimes. Why does the Black guy have to be the one with anger? But some people felt like it maybe was put in there because his family probably didn't realize that he was possibly queer, and they didn't know how to deal with it, so they put him in the asylum, saying that he was trying to take himself out or something like that. Now that's just one. That's just mine, or just a few people, because I talked about a few people. But I'm just saying that he's a character that you can actually look at from a different angle.
Sure. To explain some of that, yeah.
Right, because Taryn had her drug thing. What's his name? Phil had his, puppetry thing and stuff like that. He was a sleepwalker. We knew that.
Joey was mute, right?
Joey was mute and stuff like that. And then Will tried to kill himself by throwing himself off of a, but Freddy probably had something to do with it. But he was a Dungeons and Dragon person and stuff. So everybody had their thing, but it's Kincaid, he's angry. And I'm like, if you look deeper into that, you can probably like pull something else outside of that, besides him just being angry.
Yeah.
But as you get closer, as I was doing that list, and I got closer and closer to, like modern times, I realized that some of the Black characters still set up a trope, or they just didn't realize they were a trope at the time. And then you get to the point where you are now, it's like there's a lot of Black characters that have a lot of personality that they can stand up on their own, not just in movies, but it's also in TV as well.
Yeah. And
so I try to incorporate a lot of those into it, and not just in those, but in sci-fi movies. And a lot of Black people died in sci-fi movies too. What's his name? Why am I Alien?
Alien, yep.
Parker. But he was the last person to die.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
So it was more along the lines of like he didn't die first in there, but he fought. I partially blame his death on Lambert, but that's a whole nother damn story. But you have also Charles S. Dutton, Charles S. Dutton and Megan Good are the forerunners for the most people, the Black actors have died the most in a horror movie. Both of them have died in just about every damn horror movie they've been in. And I was like,
what what it changed the game back, like when Scream 2 was trending like a couple months ago. Elise Neal, who was Haley, Sydney's roommate, stated that in the original script she was supposed to be the killer. That would have been crazy in my opinion, because like that would have changed the whole game, because like you said, that trope character, because she was there for Sydney and then reveal like, oh, she's also Black and the killer. That would have changed the whole aspect of like how everything was. But the script had got leaked and they had to do like a change to it. But I think
I agree with you there, Brandon, because I was like, I know that initially also she was supposed to be dating Joel. And they were supposed to kill Joel. I think Joel was supposed to be the last kill, and then her and Derry were going to end up being the killers, and they were going to be lovers. And that also Mrs. Loomis was going to be the third killer of that movie. But I was kind of pissed off that they kind of didn't go with it. This is why I always hate spoilers. And I'm pretty sure y'all been aware of the whole shit going on with Scream 6 right now. So I purposely have been off Twitter and stuff and Facebook and stuff like that, because people are just assholes. But they unfortunately don't have the luxury that they did back then in the middle of filming to be like, okay, we just changed the end because it leaked. I would have loved to have seen Hallie, like have a fight scene and just fight, get, with Sydney or something like that. It'd have been pretty cool. It'd have changed the game. Because I think it'd probably been like, but I'm pretty sure somebody would have been like, well, why does she have to be the killer? And I'm pretty sure that'll open up a whole nother discussion on Black serial killers. Because a lot of people don't realize they see of a serial killer, they see like Gacy, Bundy, Dahmer. There are a lot of Black serial killers out there.
The only one that anyone ever noted, like actually, well, and that's more recent, is the Cleveland child murders. Atlanta child murders. Sorry,
Atlanta child murders.
Atlanta. I was getting it confused with. There actually was. Is it Anthony Sawa from Cleveland? Was another one. But yeah, like it's other than those two, and those aren't like wildly talked about at all.
Yeah, there's a guy like right after the whole Dahmer show. I was just like curious. I hit YouTube and say like Black serial killers. You know what I mean? And then like so many popped up. There's so many documentaries and like story clips. There was one guy, the Strangler, that was going after the prostitutes, and he was doing that because he was just like, ain't nobody gonna care about her, ain't nobody gonna care about them.
Was that the Cleveland one, Brandon? Was that the guy from Cleveland? They
I'm not
don't.
sure, but he moved around, so they had
Okay.
that smile to him, like he would just sit there, like
I
you
think
wouldn't think.
Yeah, I think that's the guy, because there's a documentary on Discovery Plus. I think they call him the Dream Killer or something like that, something like that, because no, the grim, the grim, something like that. They're still discovering women that he killed after all these. They've caught him.
Yeah.
They'll bring a case to him like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember her. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, he was
I
laughing
did
about it.
kill her. Yeah. And that's terrified me. Then there's another a guy and a woman who were there's a black guy and a black woman, but she was like pretty much his, like, not, I don't want to say slave, but like his assistant. Like, she didn't partake in all of the killings, but they had those two up as like the number. When I did a list of serial killers one time, that was up there in the top 5, and a lot of people don't talk about.
So let me ask you guys a question. Why is it that white serial killers seem to get this like almost glorification, and or like just like it's all over the place that everyone knows like those popular names, but like there's black serial killers and they're not widely discussed at all?
I think it has something to do with the fact that they're black, and one, it's like we don't want to, because that's the thing about the Atlanta child murders. That's a whole episode right there in itself that I think I could have a panel of people on, because there are people who believe that his name escapes me right now, so let's get off, y'all. I'm gonna remember his damn name. But there's a lot of people think he's innocent, and there's a lot of people who think he's still guilty. I'm on the fence, because my whole thing with that case was that a lot of people was trying to say that it was a Ku Klux Klan conspiracy going on, and I was like, I can buy into that if these black kids were in a white neighborhood.
Sure.
But these were all black neighborhoods where these kids were getting taken from, and
which is ultimately what like part of the reason why I feel like it's not widely discussed. It's because these are all black neighborhoods, black kids, so it's like I think the general public at that time kind of just breezed over it. Like, this is just stuff that happens in this like community, and it's, you know, it's not national attention until it's in outside of that. It's in the suburbs or something like that, right?
That's true, because that's the thing about like a lot of missing cases right now. Because again, Tanana Radu says Black history is Black horror, and a thing that a lot of people, don't pay attention to is that there's a lot of Black missing women and kids, and even men, that go missing daily. But we don't have like the coverage like we do with like what was the girl name?
Gabby
Peterson. But whether all those blue-eyed blonde girls, or just Chandra Levy, we don't have any of those like lately. We have them. We have them on a daily basis. It's just that we don't get the national attention. And what I do on my personal IG page is that I always put up those missing posters of those people all the time. If I see one, I put them up. They do help. And so it's just daunting to see that, we don't talk about it a lot, because the neighborhood people probably have this assumption that, like the serial killer said, nobody's going to miss them.
You
know what I'm saying? And then you have, people who don't want to say anything, that might know something about these missing people, and they might be a part of it, that somebody might be protecting somebody they know, you know what I'm saying? And just, I know who did it, but I'm not gonna, that's my son, or that's my brother, so I'm not gonna say anything there if I'm gonna protect them. It's a multitude of reasons why.
Because within the community there's also this idea of like, we got to kind of protect our community, we can't be tearing it apart, we can't be so there's that element to it too, right?
Yeah, but it's to a degree, because I know people will try to use the stop snitching mantra and everything like that. But when it comes to missing people, I think and I'm not speaking, I don't know, because I'm not from that type of area, but I think that was more along the lines of like, in terms of somebody broke into a car or something like that. And because they probably say stop snitching, so they won't bring in like a misdemeanor like that can turn into Trayvon Martin situation. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, you shot this person over, break into a car, and you got somebody who's done worse, who's sitting in like, who's either in prison, maybe on parole sometime soon or something like that. But I feel like it comes to just, people not wanting to talk because they feel like the police not gonna, we can talk all we want to, but the police are not going to either not do anything or they're gonna make the situation even worse. Like they might get a suspect and then sit there and be so hard on this suspect to the point where that suspect is innocent and they end up getting killed in the process. Or it's just it goes back to just policing in general and how it's been very detrimental to the Black communities. So that's one of the reasons why I feel like they don't talk about them as much. But it says something about, like that Black serial killer said nobody's gonna miss them. That says something about certain aspects of our community, not our community as a whole, but certain aspect of it. Because if you feel that way about your own, then there's kind of like no hope for you. You know what I'm saying? There's no hope for you. And there's unfortunately a lot of people out there like that. And I try to steer clear from them type of people if I come across them. If anybody sit there and tries to be like apologetic to like certain causes and whatnot, and I just be like, look, I need you to get out more, because I kind of had to save myself from that. Again, I came from Mayberry, and then when it got to start clicking for me, when they would always tell me like, oh, you're such a good boy, you're not one of them, you're not like the others, I got tired of hearing it, because I was like, first of all, you don't know me, and second of all, because I'm not out in the streets, not doing God knows what, doesn't mean that I might not have the same feelings that some of those people do. Those are my brethren. We got at the end of the day, if I so happen to accidentally take a pen out this bitch, I'm going to be treated like somebody who probably sat there and shot somebody dead in the middle of the street. You know what I'm saying? So
doesn't it also send that message though, that like other people who look like you, there's something inherently wrong with that population, and you're like an outsider of that, you're an exception?
Exactly. And the thing of the matter is, no matter if I have a degree, no matter if I do have a love of reading and I love of writing and I like stuff like the OC and Sweet Valley High and shit like that, at the end of the day, I would still get gunned down just like the person who might like, something like they might sit there and quote whatever song that gangster rap or something like that. I'm a huge 360. That's what I'm talking about. They sit there like, oh, you're such a good boy. You're not like the others. I blast the fuck out of 3-6 Mafia.
I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah,
I thought that you were about to say.
I love 3-6 Mafia. Again, something my brother got me into. I love 3-6 Mafia. I love Player Fly. All those local rappers around here. I love all this shit because I know where they're coming from. Like I didn't grow up in neighborhoods, but I know that that eerie feeling of somebody always watching you. And just to say for 1 second, I got my first bout of racism going into a secondhand shop. I went in the secondhand shop all the time. Go straight to their book section, get like a 50 cent, their paperback for 50 cents. I would go in there, just get, the store owner will always follow me. Always. And it didn't dawn on me until I got, I was like, I asked him, is there something wrong? He was like, no, I'm just trying to see if you need help with anything. I'm like, I come in here all the time and I'm constantly buying either books off of you or, they might have a video game. Hell, they had Stargate season 1 in there. I bought that, you know what I'm saying, for $10. I'm like, you can't beat that. So I'm like, I'm on here buying shit that, I'm trying to give you business and you encroaching my personal space. And he was like, well, I just, I don't want no trouble. So that day I put down what I was trying to buy and I walked out, and I actually walked home crying because that was my first taste of blatant racism. And it took me growing older, getting a little bit older before college, and then realizing all the microaggressions and shit that I probably passed over. Let's go over my head. Then I started getting more angry. I started getting angry. So when I got to college, I was this angry person. And I had to alleviate a lot of that anger off of me by, socializing and, realizing that I'm not this weird person and stuff. So at the end of the day, I took all of that anger and all that, stuff, and I started writing. That's when I told myself that I was going to start being, you know, the first Black horror writer.
Yeah.
But I was going to include some of that in that, and then realize it was already laid out for me. You know, so it all comes full circle. But the Black horror movies as of late have given us a lot more dialogue. In between like what we want to see and what we don't want to see. And I tell people all the time, like stuff like was it Antebellum, which I haven't seen. I'm pretty sure it was horrible, but I haven't seen it. And then the Amazon show Them, and the show that recently came out on FX called Kindred. That's an Octavia E. Butler novel. And I feel like, because when Antebellum came out, I felt like they were stealing the idea from Kindred. But I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know how they executed it. But Kindred is one of those stories that you have to be careful with, because we're in this time frame where we as Black people are getting tired of seeing Black slave narratives and stuff like that. And some people don't want to see, like, I know there's a big dialogue with when Them was released and how it was like, how did one person say it? I think Girl That's Scary said it best. I think it probably wasn't Girl That's Scary, but it was somewhere along the lines of, it was pretty much racial porn. And the first episode alone was just hard.
Like highlighting racism, like including racism within the context of the film, just for the sake of showing racism. You felt, is that kind of?
Well, they were saying that because I didn't finish the show, but it's like as each episode got progressive, as it got progressively worse, to the point it got to the point where folks felt like they were just doing racist shit or just racist tropes just to make okay. Both shows come at the same time. Let me give you an example. You got Lovecraft Country. You know, that had a lot of racism underlying with it, but it wasn't to the point where it was like you had a chance to breathe in each episode. You know what I'm saying? But in Them, from what I was told, it got to the point where it was just torture. Like, instead of taking torture porn, it's like torture racism. Let's take like the torture porn of like Saul and Hostel and stuff like that. And you like, was that necessary? You know, it's like you add to them. It's like, was that necessary? And so a lot of people had a problem with it. But then, you know, I was one of those like, well, you know, initially, because I sat there and said, I know that Lena Waithe had her produced it, and that I know it was created by Little Marvin, who was a Black man. But then they said, you look at the writer's room, and it was mostly white folks. And I was like, oh, I said, okay, you know. But I also told people that, you know, Lena Waithe's name might be on it, but she probably only like executive produced like the pilot. But it's like everybody was like attacking her because they also said another show that she does, The Shy, is also kind of like very, you know, can be kind of dour and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I'm not finna, you know, try to, you know, save this, you know, but I have a crush on Lena Waithe, so you guys excuse me. But that's one of the lesbians. Just one of the few lesbians that I have a crush on. But
so you're kind of answering something I wanted to ask both of you, and just in regards to like how Black horror today, like, does it truly represent the Black community? Or, and here's something I think happens sometimes, and I'm not saying this is across the board, I think sometimes in mainstream horror, we see like what they feel a white audience will digest about Black people. So it's like Black characters who are almost like so not the stereotype of like what we used to see in like 90s, you know, Black horrors like Tales from the Crypt. They're like so against that it's like, is that even really a real person? You know, it's like I feel like sometimes they struggle finding like just feeling like they can present authentic people and like people will be like, all right, that's a film I want to see.
Yeah, it's kind of like that new film that just came out, Fear. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't watch it yet, but I feel as though that they tried to like put so many characters in our face, like from certain things. Like we had to have like T.I., you know what I mean? And some of the guys from like the Instagram comedian guys. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's a different feel to it, where it's like I was saying earlier, when like with Brandy and stuff like that, it's like, what about the other actors and stuff that are really good actors? It's kind of like how the NFL is with the coaches and stuff. Like when they're like, okay, well, they're just good for like assistant coaches or whatever, but they can't be like the head coach. They can't get that role. Like I said, they have to be something big from out of the acting field to become in
Yeah.
the role, and they're not that really good at acting.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And then it doesn't feel true because it's like, and it's no disrespect like T.I. or anything, but he's not an actor. You know what I mean? And so why is he representing like someone as a role that can like do a great job like in certain films? You know what I mean? That's the way I view it. And like it's no knock, but it's like that's the way I view it. You know what I mean? I want to see everybody work, but it's like I want to see everybody work. I want to see everybody do a good job at it, but it's like let's put some real good actors in those positions. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm pretty sure there was a lot of other people bigger than Trey Songz that could have played that role a little bit better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's just the thing. I feel as though that's what the mainstream horror is. You have to be someone in another lane to be in this, and I don't think it should be that way.
Yeah, and I feel like all the black characters are always like safe characters. Like they can't have like the duality that a white character can have. Like you know they're usually very safe, or they're going to be like, you know, a villain in the film. I feel like they struggle with that sometimes.
This always brings it back to like, you know, I think Deion Taylor did Fear, and he was responsible for I haven't seen it yet. What's the name of the movie? Chain Letter. He did a movie called Chain Letter. I haven't seen it yet. He also did, he's part of the people who did if I'm not mistaken, Tales from the Hood.
Mm-hmm.
And he also, but he did that, but it's just like, I would say just put more black people in behind the screen. Because to me, black horror today, it depends on who you talk to. Because, you know, some people probably feel like, me for instance, I feel like we're in a renaissance of sorts. Then there's some people who feel like, you know, hey, some of these black horror movies ain't hidden unless they talking about something.
Yeah.
Then you have those who are just happy to just have black people, black faces in spaces that they don't see them in often.
Yeah.
Because for instance, Candyman 2021, shockingly, a lot of people were like, you know, it's not scary because, you know, and this was coming from some black people, which upset me a little bit, because they were saying it's not scary because it's trying to like give a message. And I'm like, what was wrong with that? You know what I'm saying? Like, why did they have to why did they have to demote the scary factor to it? Because it still had like its own little black body horror situation going on with Yaya's main character of Anthony transforming literally into this monster. And then you have like this commentary or whatnot of Candyman. And then the Candyman Blu-ray came out, and Tanana Abdul and her husband Steve Barnes did a feature for the release, and they mentioned how Candyman is a great film, but when it came to race relations, it fumbled because it did, you know, the whole, you know, I think most people ought to make it feel like they did it by, you know, Candyman lusting after Helen and stuff like that. But she was a reincarnation of his, you know, his true love back in the day. Plus, Candyman he only killed one black person in that entire movie, and that was Casey Lemons' character. And it was like he's terrorizing the black community though, but it's like he's also terrorizing anybody who calls him. It's just that so happened that the black community knows about him, and they know what he's capable of, and they're just, you know, he's like their boogeyman and whatnot. But I feel like they touched on some stuff that I feel like Nia DaCosta's Candyman picked up and carried on with it. I feel like they, you know, parallel each other, because the concept of Candyman is all about the Jesus Christ, the urban legend, excuse me. It depends on who's telling it. And I think that's the thing about the mythos of Candyman. You have the Candyman from 1992 and that urban legend, and you see how it kind of shifts in the 2022. We know the true legend, but as far as depending on who's telling it, it tends to shift. And it goes to movie making. It all depends on who's telling it. If you let somebody white tell a black story, it kind of gets a little bit muddled in translation. And if you have somebody black telling the story of, like, for instance, I don't think somebody white could have written Get Out.
No.
I don't think it would have been taken as seriously as it was taken by, Jordan Peele and stuff like that. And so, but when you have somebody, and it's been shown in recent years that if you let somebody black do the storytelling for a black horror show or movie, because Lovecraft Country is a testament to that. That was all black love there. And you had, white people behind the scenes, because J.J. Abrams behind the scenes. I think you had a couple of white writers. And then people don't realize that Lovecraft Country, the book, was written by a white man.
Yep.
And again, that was a great translation from what he gave us. And Misha Green took that and she enhanced it.
Yeah.
Because reading the book, each chapter in that book plays as an episode of the show. It's just things go differently a little bit. And Misha actually brilliantly brought that book into the story, but it was written by the protagonist's son, Atticus' son. But at the same time, they mentioned the stuff they mentioned that happened inside the book on the show is what happens in the actual book. And because Atticus' son was protecting actual events. So it just goes into who's telling the story. And I feel like when it comes to black horror, there's certain movies that tell our story really well. In later years, I mean, in the modern, in recent years, and there's some that don't. They'll throw the real out there and then reel it back. But also, it depends on it. Oh, excuse me. I gotta get myself together. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that a black person cannot fuck up something that's black.
No. And I think studios play a big part in it too, though, because I think there's a lot of pressures of what they're going to allow. And then like films can get totally thrown off track. And I think that like sometimes we see better representations in like the non-mainstream films because they can be more authentic. And I think that Brandon, remember we had talked about DJ Classics slasher.
And I feel like the budget wasn't big on that. That's a Blumhouse film. Why wasn't that?
Wait, are we talking about the one I think we're talking about?
Probably, yeah. I think slasher.
Thriller?
What was it?
Thriller.
Yeah,
Thriller.
Yeah, Thriller.
But I mean, it, but
it's a Blumhouse film, but it's not being like given that same treatment as every other Blumhouse film. You know what I mean?
That's what I was good at when I said some people could fuck up some shit. Because, and the thing of the matter is, Brandon, when I first saw the trailer for that, it said Blumhouse on it.
Yeah.
And I saw it, I'm like, first of all, somebody's fucking lying. This is a concept trailer for something that somebody's trying to get off the ground, because this is not a Blumhouse movie at all. No. It doesn't have the Blumhouse, aesthetic to it. And then to come to find out, they were like, oh, we're gonna just throw this on our, we're gonna throw our name on it. I'm like, Blumhouse, what y'all could have done was gave them the funds.
That's what I'm saying.
The money and the production value to do what he wanted to do. And to make a better script, because there were some parts of that movie that I was so pissed off at that movie. And there's a lot of people who are like, feel the same, but I also feel like you don't have to always say this is what I was trying to say earlier. When it comes to black horror, I don't never try to tell a black person how they should do their black horror story, because I know a lot of people were saying like, Little Marvin could have did something else besides them. We're tired of seeing all these racist, things, this and that. And my counter to that was maybe that's how he views horror. It's just like the racist implications of horror. He might not have executed well, but that's his story to tell. Because you have those people saying that, and then you have those who are saying like, I don't get these last two Jordan Peele movies because they didn't have any type of racial message in it. That it's pretty blatant. And I'm like, so which one do you want? How about we just, there's room for all types of black horror stories. Let's do that. Let's go with that. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, for every Get Out, we gotta have a bad hair. For every them, we gotta have a Lovecraft Country. You know what I'm saying? We gotta balance it out. Everything doesn't have to be top tier. Everything that comes out is not gonna be top tier. But the fact that we're out there making these stories and giving black people a chance to sit there and be proud to love horror and not be ostracized within our community and also within the horror community sometimes. That's what I want. I want us to be, we are a force to be reckoned with, because we do come out in droves. We do come out with the box office numbers and whatnot. I mean, some of those Avengers movies, Black Panther didn't do this shit by we did, just we come out for this shit because we want to see ourselves on the screen. And so in every aspect of the matter, because I know it's not hard, but Star Trek, I know a lot of people were bitching about Sonequa Green being like the focal point of the Star Trek Discovery. And I actually had somebody say in the Star Trek group, why does it have to be so many gay people on Star Trek now? Why is there so many Black people on Star Trek? We know they exist. They don't have to be on just like in our face every 5 minutes. That's the fucking point.
Right.
Just because we exist don't mean that we just be existing in the background. It's supposed to be this all white crew, and the only people of color on here got a fucking few ridges on their head or their nose and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, I feel like a lot of people love Deep Space Nine only because Avery Brooks and his son Jake Sisko probably came across as one of the good people. It's like, no, Sisko could get hood with your ass just as quick as anybody else could. You know what I'm saying? So you just have to take him there. But it's just, we want to see ourselves on TV. That's all. We want to see ourselves in these movies.
And I think the argument from other people is we don't want to see stuff that makes us feel uncomfortable. And I'm sorry, but that stuff has just as much of a right to exist as anything else. And forever, it hasn't been able to exist. So I think that it's got to, society's just got to accept that, like, these films are going to be made, these representations are going to happen, and they're healthier because they allow everybody to feel like I can connect with this. This is made for me, not this is always made for this type of person.
And and I think the reason why Get Out, I know a lot of people try to down Get Out. I know we keep coming back to Get Out. We got other movies back there like Tales from the Hood. Like we discussed the Blaxploitation films. We got other movies that can, but it's just, I feel like everybody focuses on Get Out because people feel like some white people think that Jordan Peele is a hack and that he only got one good movie that's not really a horror movie, it's a social thriller. It's like, no, it's a horror film because it's horror. People are getting their bodies, they're getting their body swapped. You know what I'm saying? So it's horror. You know what I'm saying? So there's nothing social. I mean, a social thriller is not social thriller, but like a thriller is something like Basic Instinct.
I was literally just gonna say Basic Instinct. That's
that's a thriller. You know what I'm saying?
But to be honest, man, like what opened my eyes was like our first interview of this new season. We had Jeffrey Reddick on, the creator of Final Destination. From that start, after making Final Destination, his main goal, he wanted to make another film with a Black cast. Still working on that till this day. You know what I mean? So that shows how hard it is.
Yeah,
right. And like, and the characters that he truly wanted weren't cast. You know what I mean? So that's why I say it's like, no, we're not going to take this person. We're going to take this other person that has like this big thing going on, and we're going to stuff it in there. That's how they're going to be in there. Exactly. And I just, when the good actors and everybody else that should get the jobs are getting passed over. And so that's something he's working on right now. And he said he's in the process of getting everything all set. And I think they're going to be probably starting the film next year or something like that. So I can't wait to check that out. But look how many years that's been.
I hope so, because the movie he recently did, help me out. I know the name is he did the movie with it was kind of similar to Final Destination, but it was a slasher. It was about this man getting beat down. I think it's never something, and he did that, and I was like, see, this is what he wanted to do, and I want to see more of it, because it's like the main lead was a Black girl, and then the cast of characters was like a group of people who you would probably sit there and see in a park. Everybody's not going to be from a same socioeconomic background or something like that in the park. It's going to be different people. Now they try to do that with Final Destination too, but I was like, cool, whatever. But I mean, don't get me wrong, Final Destination 2 is awesome. I'm just saying it's an awesome movie. It's just that but I agree with you, Brandon. We just need more people to do like Jeffrey needs to get with he can direct his own shit, but if he get that he got with Monkey Paw or something like that, if we didn't have to always go to Monkey Paw to do our shit, we could just get more production companies, get more like chances on like black owned production companies. 'Cause I know I don't like Tyler Perry's movies like that.
Tyler Perry, but Tyler Perry got the money, got the studios over there, some people over there, you know, do it the right way. So
yeah, the problem is he wants to be hands-on with everything. I'm like, Tyler, just give the money to a up-and-coming black horror writer or black horror director or something like that, and just put your name on it and just stay back. Don't be like, well, I want if they want to film on the studio, let them film on the studio. You know what I'm saying? This all just you can do it. It's just if we just put more money into that. Into that sector, you know what I'm saying, and we can do some shit, you know what I'm saying. Horror Noire, Shudder sat there and gave us not only a documentary but a fucking anthology film, and I was kind of pissed off at first because I'm like, I really want an anthology show because we don't have a black horror anthology series out there, and I was like, that would be great for us to sit there because you can sit there and throw in like, you know, get some up and coming directors like black young directors or directors of color to come in and do a script written by a person of color or a black person or something like that, and just keep churning them bitches out like Tales from the Crypt, you know what I'm saying. Creep Show is cool. I think that the Twilight Zone remake was a good idea. You know what I'm saying? It just that so many people were so on it. Oh, it's too woke. And I'm gonna say this. I want to take more time for y'all, but that shit pissed me off to the fucking fullest. I said clearly your ass did not pay attention to any of the old damn Twilight Zone shows that came out back in the day. They were always talking about the betterment of humankind and, you know, history and whatnot. They had a whole episode with Dennis Hopper being a fucking Nazi, and he was channeling the ghost of Adolf Hitler. And they were talking about how, you know, one bad idea, like one impressionable person can become a monster. You know what I'm saying? If you keep feeding them the wrong shit. And it's just like Twilight Zone has always been about, you know, and that let me know then that a lot of you motherfuckers just sit there and be like, oh, that was just a great episode. And it just goes right up your head.
That's a great episode.
Right up your head. You know, like I'm like, Jesus Christ. And so I'm like, so clearly you guys have
and I think that connects to like Jordan Peele, back to like Jordan Peele stuff, because like I know Brandon, like I mentioned that a couple of times with like Us. I always took it as like a Twilight Zone episode, and you know, and like I think he gets that. I think he gets what the point of Twilight Zone is, and he like sci-fi horror math
that stuff, you know.
But I think he also gets how it connects to like the societal stuff too,
right?
Because we can say Us isn't like a Get Out, but there is messages in there. There is things in there that you can extract if you really want to dissect it, or you can just take it as, you know, strictly for what it is. I think that's what's nice about Us is like it can be taken
in so many
surface level or go deeper, and you can get more out of it. The same with Nope. Like both of those can be taken more surface or deep. But I think those are important to have. I think all of it, all of what he's doing serves a purpose for bettering, you know, black films, black horror, and everything like that.
He's not, but it's not just him. He's just the one who's getting all the flack.
Well, he's the only one that's like really has that access to mainstream, and like, you know, like we're eager for what he has next all the time.
Yeah, and you got Misha Green. You have, like I said, Dr. Riley Means Coleman. She's the and Tanana Rap dude. They're the what's the word I'm looking for? The with the people in the museum, the
curators.
They're the curators. Thank you, because I knew that. I'm just hungry and brain dead right now. They're the curators, and also Ashley Blackwell of Graveyard Shift Sisters, and she does a lot of stuff. And when you put all these people together, us black horror content creators, and those are allies and whatnot, we put all this together, we can make this shit happen. I feel that with Jordan Peele, the reason why a lot of people try to shit on him is because they feel like he's coming for society in a manner that is like, you know, oh, it's not that bad. But that's the problem. Each decade, I forget which horror documentary said it, but within each decade, the zeitgeist had its of their time had its own fear. Like the 50s and the 40s and 50s, it was more along the lines of, like nuclear war and outer space, terrestrial shit. 70s and 60s were like, satanic rites and like, Satanism and, the counterculture and all this shit. The family values are being tormented. Then we get into the 80s where it's just, like the boogeyman,
Yeah.
suburban America's being attacked, and then you get the 90s where it's just, serial killers, like the
Satanic Panic, all that stuff.
satanic panic and the desensitization of the desensitizing of children, you know what I'm saying? Because that's what Scream is all about, you know what I'm saying? Like how desensitized we are to violence. Then we get to the it just goes on. So right now society is really scary.
It is.
I mean, you can't look outside without somebody doing something crazy. Like, you can't, we got people who are shooting up family members because somebody cheated, you know what I'm saying? And then they might sit there and go into a grocery store and just start shooting people just because some of these people don't have manifestos anymore. They just sit there and go and do it because they can do it.
Yeah.
And they know that they can do it, and they can sit there and probably get put up for free in prison and get free food and housing and lodging and stuff like that. They got to worry about nothing else until they get there and they realize that, prison is hell and they're not going to get out of it. And they pretty much sign themselves up.
Yeah.
So society's scary right now. And another thing about Peele that I wanted to mention before we leave is he hasn't had a particular Get Out. He didn't have a monster. Us, we were the monsters. And then in Nope, the monster was Jean Jacket, but at the same time was Hollywood. So technically Jordan Peele doesn't have any like Freddy Krueger's coming in,
right,
Michael Myers coming in and just fucking up shit. It's just us.
Yeah,
we're the ones who are fucking up shit.
Yeah.
And he's just telling us that, because let's say if Jean Jacket was a thing, we'd be too busy fighting each other to realize that something's coming from above to fuck us up. You know what I'm saying? So that's the problem. And the same thing could go back to George Romero in Night of the Living Dead. The reason why those 7 people could not survive the night.
Oh, it was because of each other. Yeah.
Because of each other.
Yes.
Because of slow moving people. Nowadays, we watch The Walking Dead. You see people walking around walkers all the time, and they'll sit there and just probably like push them off or just pop them in the, like stabbing the head or something like that. Night of the Living Dead, we was too like you fuck you to even get past all of that. So it's like we've come a long way, but we've come to another level of it's 2023 and we still haven't,
we're still doing the same things. Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right, man. Mark, thank you for this conversation. This has been awesome. This episode itself was exactly how I kind of envisioned, like just touching on everything and anything. I didn't want to just recap the films from, in Black horror. I wanted to actually like touch on these topics and issues. So I appreciate you living up to all of my expectations. Thank you for that.
I'm glad to be offered, and because I'm glad that we actually went around with this, because again, you can always do a Black horror show about the Black horror films that we as an audience already know exist. And I know every year we do something, but I know most people, I feel that's why I do my podcast. I feel like most people already know what I'm talking about. So I always try to give something new that can be a conversation starter or get us to just give somebody a negative information they probably didn't know. You know what I'm saying? So thank y'all for having me, and thank y'all for letting me just be able to talk freely and just I could be out of the place. Sometimes y'all heard my podcast. I'm trying to do better at that. But as long as I get y'all to focus me in, I'm
you agree.
Now, how can people find you, Mark?
You can find me on Instagram at Marco Estes. That's my personal page. If you do love horror and you're not crazy, I will add you. But for everybody else, there is Midnight Social Distortion, all one word, on Instagram, where you can find me at. You can also find me on Twitter at The Anti-Critic. That is been my Twitter handle forever. You can also find me on Scream Kingz. I feel like we have a new episode Wednesday night on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. It's called the Scream Kingz podcast. So you can find us there every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. No, sorry, I think it's 7 p.m. No, it's 8 p.m. Eastern. Excuse me. I keep forgetting. I'm still on my time central. So 8 p.m. Eastern for Scream Kingz, and my podcast, Midnight Social Distortion, which will be coming out hiatus very, very soon.
Awesome. Mark, thank you again. This was awesome. Really appreciate this conversation. And to everyone listening, if you haven't seen any of the films that we mentioned today, we highly recommended them. So please check them out. Mark, before you go, I have one more for your list. Dr. Black and Mr. Hyde. If you haven't seen it, that's another Blaxploitation one. It's on YouTube. Somebody added some hip hop music to it, but it's it actually doesn't, it's not bad. But it's kind of it's a film for you to check out for your research, right?
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
But to mention that. But everybody, thanks for listening and have a great night.